Helen Curtis drew aside the flimsy curtain that draped the sole window of the cheap furnished room she shared with Joyce Noble and gazed out into the deserted midnight street. Helen fumed. Lucky Joyce. Joyce was always going out on dates, being shown the town, taken to nightclubs and fancy parties, while she, Helen, was forced to spend lonely evenings in their cold water flat. Now she watched as a flashy car drew up to the curb. Joyce got out, followed by her latest conquest. "I had a lovely time, Mr. Boxer. Thank you so much, and you've been awfully sweet about the contest. I'll see you tomorrow then?" "Tomorrow night, Miss Noble, at the award presentation. I won't be at the contest, but you just showed George that note, and you're in." Helen watched as Joyce cleverly avoided Mr. South Boxer's fumbling attempts to kiss her goodnight. After a while, he gave up and drove off. Joyce came inside. "Have a nice time, honey?" Helen asked. "Oh, Helen, you're up! I hope I didn't awaken you. I have such wonderful news, darling." Helen studied Joyce as she undressed. Pretty Joyce. She'd always managed to get the breaks ever since they both came to New York City in search of modeling careers. "I'm going to win a beauty contest tomorrow morning, Helen," Joyce exclaimed. "Going to win? I don't understand. How can you be sure?" Joyce reached for her bag and handed her jealous roommate the slip of paper Mr. Boxer had given her. "Just read that." Helen unfolded the note and read, "George, be sure the bearer of this note wins the contest today, Boxer." Joyce giggled. "See? It's all fixed. It's a put-up job. I win, come what may." "That's wonderful for you, honey. What kind of contest is it?" "I'm going to be Miss Corpse of 1954. "Miss what? Corpse? What in the world?" "The Undertakers and Embalmers Association is having a convention in New York this week. The beauty contest is a publicity gag, but it means newspaper spreads, might even mean Hollywood." "Gee, Joyce, that's swell." Helen smiled, even though her stomach churned with jealousy. Joyce was always fortunate that way. She'd always managed to land a few modeling jobs, while Helen had drawn blank after blank, and now this. "I'm so excited, Helen. I don't think I'll be able to sleep." "Let me fix you a warm drink of milk, babe," Helen offered. Helen got out of bed and slipped behind the screen that concealed the room's tiny kitchen unit. She thought about the note. "Be sure the bearer of this note wins." The words pounded in Helen's angry, jealous brain. She reached for the bottle of sleeping pills. If Joyce overslept tomorrow, why, I could go in her place and I'd get the break I need. "Oh, no trouble at all, Joyce," Helen said as she unscrewed the cap and emptied the remaining sleeping pills into the pot of warming milk. She poured the milk into a glass and brought it to her attractive roommate. "There we are, honey." "Thanks, Helen. Did I tell you about Mr. Boxer?" Joyce asked as she sipped the milk. "Mr. Boxer is the publicity man for the Undertakers and Embalmers." "Say, what's in this milk?" Joyce paused. "I dissolved a sleeping pill in it, honey. It'll help you drop off. A little tired, hon?" "Anyway, once, give him brush off and I..." Joyce smiled, draining the glass. "Thanks. Anyway, all I had to do was sweet-talk the slob and he fell for me. He can't be at the contest tomorrow, but he'll be, award presentation, yawn." Helen slid into bed beside the prostrate Joyce, listened to her heavy breathing and thought, it'll be easy. Mr. Boxer won't be at the contest in the morning, so I'll be safe. In the morning, Helen arose quietly and dressed hastily. She fished the note from Joyce's bag and slipped out the door, pausing only to sneer at the silent figure in the bed. Helen caught a bus uptown and went to the hotel where the Undertakers and Embalmers Association was holding its convention. As she crossed the lobby, she overheard snippets of a conversation. "Heh, heh. So I says to the dame, 'Sorry, lady, your husband was over 6 feet 4 inches tall. That'll mean a custom-built coffin.' Ha! And I bet you soaked her plenty." "I sure did. Pushed up the price on a standard job by $200. She never knew the difference. Think a bawling widow's gonna get up and measure a coffin during the service? Ha, ha. Boy, did I have to squeeze to push Jasper in." Helen cleared her throat and interrupted nervously. "Excuse me, could you help me?" One of the men turned to her. "Huh? Oh, sure, lady. What do you need?" Helen held out the note. "Mr. Boxer gave me this note to give to George. Could you?" "Ah, sure. Hey, George." The man called out. A tall, dark man turned. "Yeah? What's up? This lady's got something for you." Helen approached George and handed him the note. "Is your name George? Mr. Boxer asked me to give you this." George read the note, then gave Helen a once-over. "Okay, honey, don't worry about a thing. Just get into your suit. The rest of the girls are in there." "Thank you, George," Helen replied. She went to the designated room, undressed, and put on her suit. She waited with the other contestants until it was time for the contest. Then, along with the others, she paraded before the wisecracking undertakers and embalmers. "Okay, boys, calm down," one of the judges announced. "Here are the results. The judges picked to be Miss Corpse of 1954, Miss Helen Curtis." Helen smiled, waiting for the flashbulbs to start going off, but nothing happened. Why, she thought. What's wrong? Mr. Boxer said there'd be newspaper coverage. One of the judges addressed her. "Tonight, Miss Curtis, tonight, at the award presentation. Come to this address at 8 p.m. "Thank you, George. I'll be there," Helen said, clutching the address. She hurried back downtown to her flat, bursting in the door and taunting, "Well, honey, here I am, Miss Corpse of 19. She choked mid-sentence. Joyce Noble lay chalk white and silent on the bed, exactly where Helen had left her that morning. She's dead," Helen gasped. I must have given her too many pills. I killed her." Helen began to cry, thinking about turning herself in and spending the rest of her life behind bars. But then she thought of the award presentation that night, the photographers, the news stories, and Hollywood. She made up her mind. "Hello, police? I want to report a suicide." By the time the police arrived, Helen had cleaned her fingerprints off the pot, the glass, and the bottle that had contained the sleeping pills. She sobbed as she recounted her story. "I was asleep when she got in last night. This morning, I left her that way. Didn't even know. She'd done it." That night, Helen rode the subway uptown to the address George had given her, gloating with satisfaction. "The police believed my story. And now it's fame and fortune for me, the climb up the ladder to success. I'm rid of Joyce, and no one suspects anything." The address led Helen to a dark brownstone on the east side of town. She rang the bell hesitantly. "I don't see any cars, I wonder." The door creaked open. George stood there. "Ah, Miss Corpse of 1954, come in." He led Helen down dark, winding steps to a dank-smelling cellar. "Members of the Undertakers and Embalmers Association, I give you Helen Curtis, Miss Corpse of 1954. Mr. Boxer was there with the others, leering at her. "What happened to Miss Noble? Miss Curtis?" Mr. Boxer asked. "She was supposed to win." Helen hesitated. "I took her place. She couldn't make it." Mr. Boxer shook his head sadly. "A pity, Miss Curtis. You shouldn't have bothered. You see." They came at her with a rustling of rubber tubes, the winnowing of scalpels, the sloshing of embalming fluid, and the humming of pumps and motors. "You see, Miss Curtis," Mr. Boxer said with a sinister smile, "Miss Corpse of 1954 must actually be a corpse.